My wife cheated with her boss, Michael, right before our wedding, then forged my signature to claim my family's $500, $0 estate. Now she's accusing me of fraud while secretly planning to sell our house for $1 million. I'm lost and furious. I never thought I'd be the guy writing a story like this, but here I am. The craziest part, it all started with a gut feeling that turned into an all-out nightmare. You know that moment when everything seems fine, then suddenly it's like the universe flips upside down. That's exactly what happened to me. My wife Lisa seemed perfect at first. We'd been together for about 3 years, planning our wedding, talking about building a life together. She was ambitious, good-looking, and seemed genuinely into me. We had our little fights, as any couple does, but nothing that felt like a sign of something more sinister. She was always a bit bitchy, sure, quick to snap, dismissive at times, but I chalked it up to her being a fiery personality. She'd throw little jabs, call me lazy or say I didn't work hard enough, but I thought that was just her way of joking around. The first real sign that something was off came about 2 weeks before our wedding. Lisa started acting weird, distant, secretive. She'd get calls late at night, hide her phone when I walked into the room, and she'd get defensive if I asked who she was texting. I didn't push her at first, but I noticed her phone kept disappearing. One night, I saw her slip her phone into her purse and go into the bathroom. When she was in there, I couldn't help myself. I snuck a peek at her notifications. That's when I saw it, messages from her boss, Michael. They weren't just work-related, they were flirty texts, stuff that made my stomach turn. I saw her calling him babe, and him responding with "can't wait to see you tonight." My heart dropped. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. I kept scrolling, and there were pictures she'd sent him, nothing explicit but enough to tell me they were more than just colleagues. I couldn't believe it. This was the woman I was supposed to marry, cheating on me with her boss right before our wedding. I felt like I'd been hit by a freight train. My mind was racing. How long had this been going on? Who else knew? I started piecing together the puzzle. She'd been acting strange for weeks, snapping at me over small things, canceling plans last minute, always saying she was busy with work. But now I knew she'd been sneaking around behind my back, screwing her boss and probably more than just him. That realization made me furious, confused, and utterly lost. I didn't confront her right away. I needed to be sure. I stayed quiet that night, watching her from a distance, feeling a mixture of heartbreak and rage. I couldn't believe I was about to marry a woman who'd do this, who had been lying to my face for months. It felt like my entire world was collapsing. I thought about the estate, my family's estate valued at $500,000, that she'd recently started talking about claiming after I got the inheritance. That's when I really started to understand her manipulative streak. She'd always been obsessed with money, always hinting at how much she deserved more, how she wanted a bigger house, fancier things. And now I was starting to see her true colors. The next day, I decided I couldn't keep quiet anymore. I sat her down, confronted her with what I'd seen. Her reaction: she looked surprised at first, then started to spin her usual bullshit. "You're crazy," she snapped. "I don't know what you're talking about. You're just jealous because I've been working late. Michael's just a boss, nothing more. You're imagining things." Her tone was bitchy, dismissive, like I was the one with the problem, but I knew better. I had proof, and I wasn't going to let her lie her way out of this. She kept denying everything, but her eyes gave her away. There was a flicker of guilt, maybe even fear, but she masked it with that bitchy attitude. She called me paranoid, accused me of spying on her, and started throwing accusations back at me, saying I was insecure, that I didn't trust her, that I was just jealous of her success. But I wasn't jealous. I was hurt, betrayed, and furious. How could she do this right before we were supposed to start our life together? The wedding was only days away, and instead of excitement, I felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff, ready to fall. That's when I realized I had to do something. I couldn't just walk away without knowing the full story. I had to find out if this was just a fling or if there was something more dangerous going on, like her trying to take control of my inheritance, manipulate her way into my life, and maybe even steal everything I had. That's when the wheels started turning. I wasn't just going to confront her and call it a day. No, I needed a plan, something to expose her, to make her pay for what she'd done. I was furious, yes, but I also knew I had to be smart about this. I couldn't let her get away with it, especially not when she was already scheming to sell our house and snatch $1 million in some twisted idea of revenge or greed. I don't know what's going to happen next, but I do know this. I'm not going to let her destroy me or take what's mine without a fight. I've got to figure out how to turn this around, and trust me, I will. After that confrontation, I knew I couldn't just sit around and wait for things to blow over. Lisa was already starting to act even more bitchy, throwing sharp comments and trying to gaslight me into thinking I was overreacting. But I was. I had enough evidence, those texts, the late nights, the sneaking around, and I knew she was planning something bigger. I just didn't know what exactly, but I could feel the stakes getting higher. I started paying closer attention to her behavior, watching for any signs of her sneaking off or making moves behind my back. It was like walking on eggshells. Meanwhile, I also had my own plans brewing, things I wasn't ready to reveal just yet. I needed a way to catch her in the act if she was up to something, especially with the estate and all that money involved. She'd been pushing hard to sell the house, claiming she wanted a fresh start. But I knew better. That house was my family's legacy, and I wasn't about to let her walk away with it, especially not after what I'd discovered. One day, I decided to dig deeper into her finances. I knew she'd been talking about how she wanted to claim her share of the inheritance, but I didn't realize how far she'd gone. I managed to get access to her bank accounts. She'd been squirreling away money, making secret investments, and even transferring funds to some offshore account. That was it. She was planning something big, probably trying to sell the house, cash out, and run off with the money before I could stop her. I felt a mix of rage and betrayal. This wasn't just about cheating anymore. It was about her trying to steal from me, from my family. I remembered how she'd always been obsessed with money, how she'd throw tantrums about not having enough, how she'd manipulate her way into getting what she wanted. Now I saw her true face: greedy, manipulative, willing to lie, cheat, and even forge my signature just to get her hands on the estate. I had to act fast. I started planning my next move. I reached out to a lawyer I knew, someone discreet, someone who could help me figure out what legal steps I could take to stop her from selling the house or draining the estate. The more I learned, the more furious I got. She forged my signature on documents claiming I authorized her to handle everything. I remembered how she'd always dismissed me, called me useless, said I didn't have what it takes. Well, now I knew she'd been lying, scheming behind my back, trying to take everything I had by any means necessary. I also decided to install a hidden camera in our living room, just in case she tried to meet with her boss or any other accomplices. I wanted proof, real evidence, to show the lawyer and maybe even the authorities if it came to that. I was done trusting her word, especially after everything I'd seen and uncovered. I felt like I was living in some twisted game, and she was the master manipulator trying to pull the strings. Meanwhile, Lisa's attitude only got nastier. She'd throw fits when I questioned her, call me paranoid or jealous, and accuse me of trying to control her, but I knew her game. She was trying to make me look crazy so she could keep her plans hidden. I kept my cool, though. Inside, I was boiling with anger. Every time she snapped at me or lied through her teeth, I saw right through her. One night, I caught her sneaking around with her phone again. She was texting someone, probably Michael or another guy, talking about getting rid of the house and moving on. That was the moment I knew I had to act fast. I couldn't let her sell the house, steal the estate, or ruin everything I'd worked for. I had to find a way to turn this around, to beat her at her own game. I kept telling myself I wasn't going to let her get away with it. I was going to expose her, stop her, and make sure she paid for what she'd done. But I also felt a strange sense of sadness. I'd loved her once, believed in us. Now I was facing the reality that she'd been lying to me from the start, planning her own kind of revenge, and using every trick in the book to get what she wanted. It was like waking up to a nightmare I couldn't wake from. I knew I had to be smarter, bolder, more ruthless. Because if I didn't act now, I'd lose everything: my inheritance, my house, my dignity. I was at a crossroads, and I could feel the weight of it pressing down on me. I just hoped I had enough time to turn things around before She completely destroyed what was left of my life. After I gathered enough evidence, those secret bank transfers, her sneaky texts, the forged signatures, I realized I couldn't keep quiet anymore. I needed to confront her again, but this time I had to be more strategic. I set up the camera in the living room, made sure my lawyer was ready, and started planning exactly how I'd catch her in the act of doing something illegal or at least shady enough to blow everything wide open. Lisa's attitude was getting worse. She was openly bitchy, snapping at me over small things, acting like she owned the place. She'd throw her tantrums, calling me paranoid and accusing me of trying to ruin everything. But I knew better. I'd seen her texts, her bank statements, her plans to sell the house. She was doing everything she could to prepare for a quick exit, probably to hide her tracks, maybe even to sell the house behind my back. One evening I came home early from work just to see what she'd do. I had my phone ready, the camera rolling, and I waited. Sure enough, she was on her phone, texting furiously. I snuck closer, trying to listen, but she quickly hid the screen. I could see her face was flushed and she was trying to act normal, but I knew better. I saw the words "sell it all, get rid of the house, and we'll be free." That was the clincher. She was planning to dump everything, our house, my inheritance, everything I held dear. That's when I decided I had enough. I couldn't let her keep going. I needed to get proof, real proof, that she was planning to screw me over. I called my lawyer immediately, told him what I'd seen, and asked what I could do to stop her from selling the house. He told me to file an emergency injunction, something that would freeze the sale until we could review everything legally. I also started drafting a formal complaint about the forged signatures and her attempts to claim my estate illegally. Meanwhile, I kept observing her movements. She was acting more desperate, more frantic. She'd come up with excuses for her late nights, blame it on work stress. But I knew she was lying. She was meeting with her accomplices, probably Michael or some shady real estate agent. She'd lined up. She'd already been talking about dividing the money and getting out of town. I knew I had to act fast before she pulled off whatever scheme she'd been planning. I also secretly hired a private investigator. I wanted someone on her tail, following her, finding out exactly who she was talking to, where she was going. I didn't trust her anymore, and I sure as hell didn't want her sneaking away with my family's estate. Every day I felt more betrayed, more furious, and more determined to stop her from walking away with everything I'd worked for. The tension was unbearable. She kept throwing her bitchy attitude at me, calling me crazy, jealous, and paranoid, but I wasn't about to let her gaslight me. I had the proof now, and I was ready to use it. I kept my cool, but inside I was raging. How could she do this? How could she betray me, cheat on me, then try to steal everything in the process? One night I caught her meeting with someone, probably Michael, at a local hotel. She was acting secretive, nervous, trying to hide her face when she saw me outside the window. I took pictures, then called my lawyer again, showing him everything. This was it. I was going to shut her down once and for all. I knew I had to be careful, though, because if she found out I was onto her, she might try to destroy the evidence or run away with the money. That's why I kept everything discreet. I started preparing my case, gathering every piece of evidence I could find: bank records, texts, recordings from the camera. I was determined to expose her lies and stop her from taking what was mine. Honestly, I felt like I was in a war against the woman I once loved, who now seemed like my biggest enemy. Every new discovery made me angrier, more convinced that I had to fight for my rights, for my inheritance, for my dignity. I couldn't let her ruin everything I'd built. I kept telling myself that I was doing the right thing, even if it felt like I was losing my mind. Because at this point, I knew she was capable of anything, and I was ready to do whatever it took to come out on top. The more I uncovered, the clearer it became that Lisa was pushing everything to a breaking point. She was frantic, desperate, and I could see her plans unraveling even as she tried to cover her tracks. The night I caught her meeting with that guy at the hotel, I knew I had enough to turn the tables. I also knew I had to be careful. She was manipulative, and I couldn't let her see me coming. I kept my distance, letting her think everything was normal. Meanwhile, I worked with my lawyer to file that emergency injunction to freeze the house sale. I also had the private investigator follow her around, gathering more evidence. I felt like I was living in a spy movie. Every call, every move, every glance scrutinized. But I didn't care. I was finally taking control. One morning, I woke up to find a text from Lisa. She was furious, calling me paranoid, crazy, and jealous, accusing me of spying on her and trying to ruin her. That was classic Lisa, blame shifting, deflecting. But I wasn't about to let her manipulate me anymore. I had proof of her meeting with Michael, proof of her plans to sell the house, and proof that she'd forged my signature on legal documents. I sat her down later that day, calmly but firmly. I showed her everything I had: screenshots, bank statements, the photos from the hotel. Her face went pale, then red with anger. She started screaming, calling me crazy, jealous, and paranoid, but I cut her off. I told her I was done playing her game, that I had enough evidence to take her to court and stop her from stealing my estate. Her reaction was a mix of panic and rage. She started crying, then went into full-blown bitchy mode, saying I was ruining her life, that she only wanted what was hers, that I was the bad guy. But I wasn't buying her bullshit anymore. I knew her game. She was trying to spin it so I looked like the villain, but I had the truth on my side. I made it clear that I was going to press charges if she kept pushing her schemes. I told her about the injunction, about the evidence I had, and about how I was planning to take her to court for fraud and attempted theft. Her eyes darted around, and I could see her trying to come up with some way out, some excuse to save herself, but I wasn't giving her that chance. At that point, I felt a strange mixture of relief and anger. Relief because I finally knew the truth and had the evidence to back it up. Anger because I'd been so blind, so trusting, and now I was stuck fighting to protect what's mine. I also felt a huge surge of disappointment. I loved her once, believed she was my future, but she turned out to be someone I didn't even recognize anymore. That night, I started packing some of my things. I didn't want to stay under the same roof with her anymore. I knew she was capable of anything, trying to manipulate the situation, maybe even destroying the house or the legal documents to cover her tracks. I was already making plans to move out, to get a restraining order if necessary, and to prepare for the legal battle ahead. I kept thinking about everything that had gone wrong, how she'd lied, cheated, and now schemed to take everything from me. It was like a punch to the gut every time I remembered. Her bitchy attitude, her manipulative lies, and her greed. But I also knew that I couldn't let her win, not like this. I had to fight for my rights, for my family's inheritance, for my dignity. It's a strange feeling, anger mixed with heartbreak, confidence fighting with despair. But I'm not giving up. I'm already one step ahead, and I swear I'll do whatever it takes to come out of this victorious. Because at the end of the day, I deserve that much. I just wish I'd seen through her sooner. Maybe then I wouldn't be in this mess now. The legal process moved faster than I expected once I had all my evidence lined up. The injunction to freeze the house sale was granted within a few days, and I could breathe a little easier knowing she couldn't just push through her plans without me stopping her. But Lisa didn't take it lying down. She doubled down on her bitchy attitude, calling me crazy, paranoid, and controlling, as if I was the villain for trying to protect what was mine. She started acting even more desperate, trying to manipulate the situation. She'd burst into tears, accuse me of ruining her life, then turn around and accuse me of being the one trying to steal from her. It was exhausting, honestly. I knew she was trying to drag me into some emotional trap, but I refused to fall for it. I stayed calm, kept my focus on the legal side of things, and made sure I documented every move she made. Meanwhile, I kept the private investigator close. He reported that she was meeting with shady real estate agents, trying to find someone willing to buy the house fast, probably at a lower price, so she could get her cash quick. I also found out she'd been talking to some guy, maybe Michael, or someone else, about getting out of town. That's when I realized she was planning a quick escape, maybe even trying to sell the house secretly if she thought she could get away with it. One day, I got a call from my lawyer. He told me Lisa had hired her own attorney, probably trying to negotiate some kind of settlement or just stall the process. I knew her game: stall long enough, and she might try to do something desperate like forge more signatures or secretly sell the house behind my back. That's why I decided to get a court order to monitor any sale or transfer of property. I wasn't going to let her slip through my fingers. The emotional toll was heavy. I felt betrayed, angry, and exhausted. The woman I loved, the woman I planned my future with, was now someone I barely recognized. She was scheming behind my back, trying to steal everything I had, all while throwing tantrums and crying wolf. I kept asking myself how I missed all the signs, how I didn't see the greed and manipulation earlier, but I also knew I had to stay strong. I couldn't let her get the best of me. One night I found her in the bedroom packing some clothes into a duffel bag. When I walked in, she looked at me with those bitchy eyes full of resentment and defiance. I asked her what she was doing and she snapped back, "Just preparing to leave. I've had enough of your paranoia." I stood there, calm but furious, and told her she wasn't going anywhere until this was sorted legally. I showed her the court order and the evidence I had, and I told her to stop playing games. She started crying again, fake tears this time, and said she was just trying to save herself, that she was innocent and didn't do anything wrong. But I knew better. I knew her game. She'd been lying from the start, scheming behind my back. I told her she was done, that I was going to press charges if she kept trying to manipulate the situation. I was tired of her lies, tired of her bitchy attitude, and tired of her greed. As I watched her storm out of the room, I felt a strange mixture of relief and anger. Relief because I had the legal tools to stop her, and anger because I'd trusted her once, and now I was fighting to protect what was left of my life. I realized I'd have to be even more careful now. She might try to do something desperate, like forge documents or try to sell the house secretly. I started planning my next moves, thinking about how to keep her from destroying everything I'd worked for. I also started considering my options, whether to go ahead with a divorce or try to settle things out of court. Part of me just wanted her out of my life completely, but I knew I had to be strategic. I couldn't just throw her out without solid proof of her schemes, and I had to make sure I protected my inheritance and my reputation. That night, I stayed awake, replaying everything: her sneaky meetings, her manipulative calls, the forged signatures. I felt like I was in a war I couldn't afford to lose, but I also knew I'd come too far to give up now. I was determined to fight, to expose her lies, and to make sure she paid for what she'd done. Because at the end of the day, I deserved a life free of her manipulations, and I wasn't going to let her steal my future. In the days that followed, everything moved at a breakneck pace. The court hearings, the evidence presentation, the legal battles, it all felt surreal. I was walking through a nightmare I couldn't wake up from, but at the same time, I knew I had to see it through. I had the proof now, and I was determined to stop Lisa from doing any more damage. The court granted a full freeze on the house sale, and I filed charges for fraud, forgery, and attempted theft of the estate. The legal system was finally on my side, but the emotional damage was harder to heal. Lisa's attitude didn't change much. She continued to act bitchy, throwing tantrums, claiming she was innocent and accusing me of ruining her life. But her words rang hollow. I'd seen through her lies. I knew she'd been scheming to sell the house, steal my inheritance, and then disappear. I wasn't going to let her, not after everything. I started the process of divorce, knowing deep down that I'd be better off without her manipulative ass in my life. The most shocking part: the day I finally got the court order to sell the house legally, Lisa's face twisted with rage. She tried to protest, crying and screaming that I was ruining her future, that she deserved her share. But her words felt empty. I had the evidence, I had the law, and I had the moral high ground. The house was sold, and the money was put into an escrow account until everything was settled. Looking back, I realize how much I loved her once, believed in us, and never imagined she'd do something so vile. But her greed, her manipulations, her lies, they all showed me who she really was. I learned that sometimes the people closest to you can hide the most dangerous secrets. I also learned that you have to be relentless when protecting what's yours. Now I'm rebuilding. I've moved out, started fresh, and I'm focusing on my own healing. I've put the past behind me and am trying to trust again, but I know better than to be naive. The experience has made me more cautious, more aware of the signs of manipulation and greed. And honestly, I've come out stronger, more prepared to face whatever life throws at me. To anyone out there going through something similar, trust your instincts. Don't ignore the signs, no matter how small they seem. Keep your evidence, stay calm, and fight for what's right. Because in the end, the truth always comes out. And when it does, you'll realize that standing up for yourself is the only way to truly move on.